Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. It's Sunday, the 29th of December, 10:24 p.m. my time. And it's been a relatively nice, I guess, holiday. Yeah, I guess you could say that. It's not over yet. The grandkids didn't come today, but they'll be coming soon. Just sort of ease my way into the show tonight. Well, I guess I do that every night, to be honest, right? I mean, who am I kidding? I always ease my way into the show. So I've got a computer set up in like 3 different rooms now. The front room is my main office, and you got to be up there during the day in case anybody comes to the front door, right? And then here in the back, I've got desks and chairs and computers set up. I've got the 2 Macs here in the back. And I put the Windows machine up front. And the reason I did that was the TV I bought is a WebOS operating system, and you can't do a media server or screencasting with the Macs. It's amazing how all this little stuff works, right? You'd think that a government would come in and regulate it, and but no. I mean, if you go into the Windows Android space, that's where you are. The connectors they use to charge their phones won't work on Mac devices. And now, as I learned the hard way, but because I have both Windows 11 and Mac Sequina, the latest operating system, there's no real difference, right? So there's no consequence. So I can't say I learned the hard way, but apparently this matching of hardware goes even into the television world as well. Who knew? What else? Well, I'm looking forward to 2025. 2025 is going to be undoubtedly an extremely colorful year. Things are going to be revealed. Things are going to continue to be revealed. And if there's one thing I'd like you all to remember, if you don't know it already, because I don't want to be condescending, whatever happens, don't let it imbalance you. Don't let it take away your belief that we live in a divinely governed reality. Because a lot of the stuff that's going on now is going to seriously assault a lot of belief systems. And every belief system, well, let's deal with the ones in the West. Every belief system is rooted in a core truth. And that core truth is we have a creator. The creator loves us. We can know our creator. In some traditions, you can merge your consciousness with the creator. Those are more practices than traditions, though. And all these things will continue to be true no matter what you hear. Okay? And when I started figuring these things out, I'd say now about, almost 20 years ago now I started to figure it out. And then I went through phases where maybe all the spiritual stuff is a lie. Maybe it's all made up. But I couldn't convince myself of that because I'd had so many multidimensional experiences. And then gradually, as I went along, I started to figure out that there was a very deliberate agenda to the unfoldment of this information. And that agenda was and is destabilization and demoralization. So the destabilization we see all around us. The demoralization we can see all around us as well. They started keeping statistics on the medical assistance in dying program in Canada. And 96% of the people who use it identify as white. And this is an aspect of the demoralization campaign. Something is trying to kill you. Well, all of us, no matter what color you are, but especially white people. I don't think that can be avoided any longer as a truth. It doesn't want to make me go out and join Aryan Nations or the Ku Klux Klan or anything like that. I don't think white supremacy is anything I find attractive. I'm a true multiculturalist. I truly adopted the Canadian consciousness growing up in the 70s and 80s. And maybe it got really tied in because of the education I got, which, as you all know, was a journalism degree. But I've grown tremendously by being exposed to so many other cultures. I looked at everything out there. I tried a bunch of things. And the thing that appealed to me the most and gave me the greatest return on investment, was a meditation system from northern India, up around the Pakistan-India border. How would I have found that if I didn't come from a multicultural society? If I didn't come from a society that was not exposed to other cultures? I've spoken 4 languages in my life: English, French, Mandarin, Chinese, and Spanish. I'm in favor of multicultural societies because there's no way to go back now. Where do you retreat to? Where do you go now? How do you make Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Britain, and the United States a racially homogeneous culture at this point? You can't. So how can I simultaneously say that the immigration program is a destabilization program? Because it's not an immigration program anymore, it's an invasion. And it's an invasion of people who in large measure would not survive a legal application for immigration to Canada, the United States, Great Britain, Australia, or New Zealand. It's an invasion because it's being facilitated by the United Nations, various non-governmental organizations, NGOs as they're called, some of them affiliated with religions like the Catholics and the Jews, It's being facilitated by our own governments because they're paying the NGOs. We know from Steve Carroll, the ex-manager in Border Patrol, who does documentary films now exposing what's really going on at the border. We know that so many people are coming across the US border now illegally. 300,000 children have gone missing. Very disturbing number. What's disturbing about that number is it is suggestive of the demand. Okay? The elites in this world have always been diddling children. The Roman senators, the emperor, Caesar, they diddled children. Why wouldn't they? They had absolute power. But it had never quite been this prolific before. And now it's mixed in with a growing occult practice, dark occult practice, power-based occult practice, what I could only call narcotic-based occult practice, meaning using human beings as chemicals and for consciousness augmentation. The blackest of spiritual arts. Now, there's a number of reasons that this is being done. Destabilization and demoralization. And I want to point out, to bring in the title of tonight's podcast, these are the weapons being used against us now. They're non-physical. They're not really part of the traditional warrior caste. Achilles, the great Greek warrior, the Spartans, the Galloways of Scotland, the Black Guard Regiment in the British military, the Navy SEALs, Green Berets. It's important to be strong for a man, at least until the end of his 40s. And then self-defense, once your children are over 20, your primary defense mission is done. You can let yourself go a little bit, get a little pot belly, stop doing those sit-ups. I just want to make sure that I'm online here, folks, because I don't see anybody in chat, which I find a little bit unusual. There's usually 2 or 3 people who've joined by now, but maybe I'm starting at an odd hour. I don't know. I think I'm live. In fact, I am, yeah. Okay, fantastic. So, a lot of times in life, one of the things that are important is the proper application of energy. And life is always about survival at a certain level. And I would say that meditation is a martial art now because the war is on consciousness. And I have to be honest, I've borrowed that phrase. It comes from a brilliant Irish commentator and aggregator of esoteric and occult information for the benefit of the common people. And here I'm referring to Michael Sarion, Tsarion. Wonderful guy. I'd love to have a chat with him sometime. If any of you know him and could set that up, just send him my YouTube channel. He can watch a couple shows and maybe he'd love to have a chat with me. Very approachable man. Tremendous humility despite the astounding information he's aggregated. He never really got his due. Sometimes I think the whole thing is a fix. Sometimes I think even Jordan Maxwell was a plant. In fact, I'm going to say right now, he probably was. I've lost all faith in Kerry Cassidy. Again, what she's done is just throw out so much non-contextualized information at people that they go into a state of hysteria and panic. The cortisol is always pumped, the dopamine is always pumping in the brain. She's going after the attention of her viewers the same way the makers of video games do with 14-year-old boys. Call of Duty, stuff like that. And that's not the right way to approach this situation. The right way to approach the situation is to remind people that they're an eternal being, having a temporary experience called a human incarnation, which they will do many times. Okay? Many times. I said on past podcasts that the incarnation grid had been broken on this planet. And that is true. And if you want to bring in all the Gnostics and the Archon stuff in on that, sure. But I don't recommend spending a lot of time on that stuff because it's too negative. And to grow, you have to stay positive. And I don't mean artificial positive thinking. I don't mean Anthony Robbins. I don't mean how to win friends and influence people. Give me some credit, please. I'm sure you do, those of you who've been with me for a while. Very small numbers on my channel. I have maybe 400 or 500 dedicated listeners between YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, and Substack. But they really listen. And they really interact with me. And that's all the dividend I need, is meaningful human interaction. Satsang, if you will, spiritual communion. Or a church service, if you will. I get the feeling that's what the Talamanca Review is to some of you. And that makes me very happy. Not that I'm trying to be a pastor. Not that I'm trying to be a guru. But I like that energetic reverence is associated with the podcast. I like that you come and you really listen. And I know it from the comments I get. And it's lovely to do this. Now, getting back on track. Every life is different. Every generation is different. The main martial art of our time is meditation now, because it's a war on consciousness. And that's why they put someone like Joe Rogan front and center now. To miscontextualize, to misdirect people. You know? If you're training 20 or 25 hours a week and you're not making your living as a professional fighter, you've been duped. Why do you need to do all that? You don't need all that stuff to defend yourself. There's a few key weapons you can walk around with in any city, and unless you get a gun pulled on you, you'll be fine. Pepper spray. Very effective. I've never been sprayed with pepper spray. But one of the young women I went to university with, she was very beautiful. One of the most beautiful women I've ever known in my life. She was Swedish. And she got harassed a lot, so her parents got her pepper spray. And she was a good friend of mine. And I said, how strong is that stuff? She says, well, I can't spray you. But what I'm going to do is we were at a restaurant close to campus in downtown Toronto. She said, what I can do is just put a little bit, I just spray a touch on the table in front of you and just bring your face close to it. She did, and I did, and I could not believe how powerful this stuff was. I mean, you'd be completely incapacitated if you got sprayed with this stuff. Another thing you can make is a blag. Just keep it in your back pocket. A blag is a roll of quarters or a roll of a larger coin. I think the quarter is the largest coin in the United States, but in Canada we have some larger coins. We have a dollar coin and a $2 coin, and they're significantly thicker and bigger than a quarter. You wrap the roll up in duct tape, and then you seal that up, or get a seamstress to sew it all up with 2 leather sides and a handle. The handle can be plastic or rolled leather. It's basically a blackjack, but in Scotland they call it a blag. You just pull it out of your pocket, you hit someone over the head once, they're not going to bother you. And you're not going to kill them. You're not going to crack their skull or anything, but they'll want nothing to do with you. So you don't need to be spending 25 hours in the gym. And it's the same thing with the misdirect on women. The clothing, the beauty, the exercise. Why? So you can date 3 different men a month from 20 to 30? Why? Why put so much time and energy into your appearance? I mean, look lovely, let your natural beauty come through. But why are we teaching women to be such whores now? And we are. I don't mean to sound like some old-fashioned fuddy-duddy, some male chauvinist, but let's be honest. My son had this great line. He said, Dad, in my generation, every woman, my son's 27. He told me this about 2 years ago when he was 25. He said, Dad, in my generation, every woman's one breakup away from an OnlyFans page. What is going on with people? Why are there so many misdirects now? And you have to understand that we as human beings are moved around like chess pieces. You can't extend the paranoid thinking into the belief that everybody's in on it. Joe Rogan's not in on it. He's just being very well used. He was going to be Joe Rogan whether he made $100 million a year at Spotify or not. I'm not sure if it was an annual or a 5-year contract. I don't know. But he was just going to be Joe no matter what. But they could see that he spoke well, he took care of himself, he worked out, he'd opened his consciousness to ayahuasca and psychedelics. He'd gone as far into the conspiracy world as ancient civilizations, Graham Hancock, but that's about as far as he really goes. And then there's 1,000,001 Joe Rogan clones out there now. Men trying to live like him, doing the ice dunk, going to the gym. And at this time in 2024, based on what I know and what I share with you on the Talamanca Review, what we know is going on, it's a misdirect of energy and resource. It's an imbalanced economy. You'd be better off meditating 25 hours a week than you would be going to the gym 25 hours a week. Because the weapons that they are using on us now are all psychological. They're not physical, right? Those of you who've read The Devil in Us, you know I grew up on the street. I've been in I don't know. I lost count. It was 20, 30 serious street fights. And what I mean by serious, is if you lose, you go to the ground and you go unconscious, they may kill you. They may just keep kicking you in the head until you have brain damage, or they may stab you. For real fights. I got really used to it. Yeah, I got really used to it. I used to sprain my left hand 2-3 times a year fighting, because I hit so hard that if my hands weren't taped the way they were when I was training at home, you'd sprain your hand or break 1 or 2 fingers. This hand. And I never really had to use my right hand. I'll tell you a little secret. Most people who fight on the street can't fight. Right? If they could fight, they'd be training. And then once they train, they see other people training. And once you see other people training, you go, wow, there's some pretty dangerous people out there. And then you don't get into fights because you know how dangerous some people are. But I had to do that because of my upbringing, because of my vulnerability at being on the street at 16, 17, 18, 19. Every kind of predator took a run at me, sex predators, everything. What else? You're 16. And you learn to defend yourself, right? So it's no big deal. But now, no, man. Even with, he's about the same age as me, Joe Rogan. Even with all his training and everything, I could take him out in about 30 seconds from 20 meters away without using anything that needs to be registered and spending $40 at Home Hardware. And there goes all his training. A street fight is what it is. It's about survival. So, to round out my point, because I'm drawing this out too much, it's a big misdirect. It's a big waste of time. Almost everything is theater now. Almost everything. Theater. Who's got the fastest missiles? What do you think the main weapon on the planet is? You think it's nuclear weapons? You think it's satellites? You think it's nuclear submarines? You think it's well-trained special forces? What is the most effective weapon on the planet now? You're never going to guess in a million years, because people don't know how to see it. So the weapon is the thing that can make people do your will. We use weapons and we use force to overpower people. When the state wants to have a word with you and maybe throw you in the can for 6 months, because it's your 4th or 5th time shoplifting, they send a couple or maybe 4 thugs to your door, 4 cops to arrest you, and if you resist, they use force. So force is always used to control people. And we've allowed ourselves to slip into the belief that force is always physical. It's a sword, it's a bow, it's a knife, not even close. The most effective weapon of the last 300 years has been money. Money is the most brilliantly conceived military tool of all time. And if you accept that to be true, even stateless, even before 1948, even 200 years ago, the Jews were the best armed people on the planet because their people controlled the finances of monarchies and emerging parliamentary systems in Europe. How come Yuval Noah Harari doesn't write a book like that? Money, its history and impact on the human race. Learning how to perceive correctly is a spiritual art. It can solve almost any riddle. It can overcome any deficiency in a combat situation. And combat is about survival, whatever that survival situation might be. Meditation is a martial art in 2024. You want to be a tough guy? Go on a Vipassana meditation retreat. You want to be a streetwise chick? You want to be able to take care of yourself? Go on a Vipassana meditation retreat. Learn how to meditate. Learn how to perceive correctly. Learn how to see what's real. Learn how to filter out all of the ghosts in your head to see what's really going on around you. And people just literally cannot do this now. They can't do it. Why? I don't know. Cognitive distraction, blue light therapy or anti-therapy, digital television. Do you know how much technology in your home or condominium or apartment has the fingerprints of the Central Intelligence Agency on it? Your television. They set up the frequency of the waves on digital television specifically for mind control. Same thing with the computers. That's a different program. That's about cognitive dissonance and chaotic thinking. But it's all being done by the same people, to the same end. I was looking at a paper the other day by the Oakland Institute. You should look them up. Just Google it. Oakland Institute. Really good humanitarian think tank that does research papers, unaffiliated. Anybody doing anything good now is doing it as a form of spiritual service. They're doing it as a form of charity. The Talamanca Review is a consciousness soup kitchen. You come here to be fed where you can't be fed anywhere else. You come here because you're hungry. And I feed you because I love you and I want you to survive. I want your children to survive. I want your husbands and wives to survive. And I want you to be good human beings, presentable to the divine. Because it's important. Because having the divine on your side is going to count for a lot in what's coming up, both here and on the other side, in this particular cycle of deaths now. Even death is different now. That's another podcast. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. And the Oakland Institute is for real. Phenomenal. And they published a research paper about 33 pages. Dense 33 pages. Not like double-spaced or anything. It'll take you an hour, hour and a half to read. On who owns the farmland in Ukraine now. You should take a look. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I'm going to stay on today's topic, which is weapons. So if force is the way you move a people, and we equate force with the warrior caste, Spartans, samurai, ninjas, SEALs, Delta, Spetsna, Mossad. Everybody's got force, everybody's got muscle, everybody's killing people. The weakest and most incapable of defending themselves are the ones usually killed. It's really shameful. That's why every Special Forces person I've ever known directly or indirectly, meaning they're a public figure, they do a podcast, Everyone I've ever known, and I've known about a half dozen, have all gone through the gun in the mouth. Do I live? Do I die? Because it catches up with you if you're a human being. Another gentleman I recommend you all take a look at. You don't have to do a deep dive or anything. He's just got a few key points, but they're important points. Is a gentleman by the name of Mark Passio. And he's an ex-Satanist who shared what he learned in that world and is sharing what he learned in that world and explaining natural law to people. And what I suppose he would call superconsciousness, or metapsychology maybe, which is the deeper working of the brain, not necessarily spiritual. You see, the public-facing psychology is only about 20% of it. The stuff that is sold commercially for therapy, for maintaining marriage counseling and stuff like that, that's about 20% of psychology. About 20% is in the hands of the universities that are producing psychiatrists and psychologists. The other 80% is intelligence agencies and secret societies, and secret societies only when you get up around the top. And if you think I'm exaggerating about that, take a listen to Manly P. Hall sometime. A relatively benign 33rd degree Mason, because they don't all go bad. Not everybody who buys a gun shoots somebody, but a lot do. Let's talk about money a little bit, because it really is the most important weapon of the last 375 years. Fiat notes, or compound interest and usury, run through a national infrastructure, because we don't really get to pure fiat notes until Nixon takes us off the gold standard. And when I say everything is by design and there are no accidents, I mean it. It's a well-known fact among economists that a purely fiat note will die after about 40 years. So Nixon took us off the gold standard in 71 or 72. And when did the system fall apart? 2008, right? Let's say it's 72. That's 28 plus 8 is 36. And then it kept going till about 2012. The financial instability, it never really stopped. We're still doing quantitative easing. The system should have collapsed a long time ago, but they're keeping it artificially alive to finish the Israel project. Because money and Israel are like first cousins. Money is the way we use money, and the way it was accepted to be used was really the Babylonian system introduced by the Jews. And they got it from where we get everything. Up there somewhere. Another species gave this technology to them. Because it's a magical system and all the magic has been imported. Human beings never figured out magic. Magic was given to us. And it was given to us specifically to, in some instances, destroy the culture it was introduced to, and in other instances to create a boots on the ground, because remember, nothing happens in this 3D reality we call planet Earth without human involvement, because we're the operative principal agent in this dimension. We can be influenced and used by extra dimensionals, whether you call them whatever you want to call them, I don't really care about the language. That's a debate for dogmatists and people who are insecure about their spiritual reality because they have not transmuted belief to knowledge yet. I have, so I don't have that insecurity. So if you want to call it demons, call it demons. If you want to call it reptilians, call it reptilians. Extraterrestrial, interdimensional. What does it really matter at the end of the day? It's not physical, and it influences us through our thoughts and our dreams. If we're open to it and we're weak to it. What, fill in the blank however you want. The result is all the same. From a nutritional standpoint, starch is starch, whether it's rice, potato, pasta, or bread. It's really just starch. It's all the same thing. Just looks different. Tastes a little bit different. Has a slightly different texture. And there are slightly different nutritional components to each one. But they're all basically a principal carbohydrate for glucose energy in the human diet. Every culture has it. Starch. Okay? So black magic was given to us by the starch salesman on the other side. I don't understand why people need to fight about this stuff. Well, I do, because part of the agenda being worked on us now is division. And so that's why they create all these things. And they deliberately create religious systems that don't really allow you to have spiritual experience, because they want to lock you into the belief system, because once you've lived pivoting off of it for a decade or two, you'll fight to defend it. That's why religious systems exist. You'll fight to defend it, because the insecurity about how you've lived your life is so great if your faith is wrong that you don't want to face that probability. You don't want to face that dark night of the soul. So you'll do anything to avoid it. Money is the great untold story. You don't have to write Sapiens like Yuval Noah Harari, but again, he's Jewish. So why is he going to write a book on money? He would be like that rabbi I talked about in The Devil in Us, who wrote a book about blood magic and human sacrifice in the Jewish culture. That dude just got taken apart by his own people, pulled his own book after a week or two. Right? So Harari's not going to do that. Why would he do that? I don't mean to pick on the Jews, but the fact is they're all Jews. They're all Jews running the United States now. Klaus Schwab is a Jew. Yuval Noah Harari is a Jew. They're all Jews. How could you not notice that? If they were all Irish, would you be called anti-Irish to talk about it? That's why they had to create the Holocaust myth. So, because at a certain stage of the plan, it would become so obvious that people would start talking about it. The soothsayers and psychics, because there's a lot of psychic and magical activity in Jewish culture, but very little spiritual activity. And the two are not the same thing at all. But it fools a lot of people, and has made millionaires a lot of these New Age phonies like Andrew Bartzis. Okay? Phony in the sense that he's not a spiritual teacher. He's a psychic. You can't get anything of spiritual value from a psychic because a psychic generally exists in a state of perpetual violation of spiritual law. So you're getting your spiritual direction from a spiritual outlaw. How do you think that's going to go for you? There's no way around the long, hard work of fasting, meditating, and praying. There's no way around it. No quick path. Oh, we've been doing it all wrong. All you got to do is eat frozen strawberries for a week and then get 2 enemas and do this dose of ayahuasca and you'll be enlightened. All these stupid people praying their whole lives. Ha ha ha, I'm so much smarter than them. There's the New Age, sarcastically caricatured without an etching, verbally, because I'm a word guy, I don't draw. Now, the problems with money could have been solved a long time ago. They also knew that so our enemy, and I say it's an enemy, but I could be wrong. Maybe I'm paranoid in my thinking. Maybe this whole human existence is an experiment controlled from another dimension, and it's generally benign. And I'm incorrect in calling them our enemy. And if that's the case, I'm open to that. I don't know everything. Stay open-minded. Don't box yourself in. So in the absence of the word enemy, let's say controllers. Our controllers are always 2 or 3 generations ahead of us because they've got that astral consciousness really locked down. But they don't go too much beyond the astral, which is low consciousness when you get into deep spiritual work. So because they knew people would start to squawk about usury. Now, usury was illegal up until about the 1500s. And that was an edict of the Vatican. And usury should be illegal. Money lending should not be a business. I know what you're thinking. Bruce, you sound like Karl Marx talking about capital. That's because the way they run the game is they put a portion of truth in all of their lies. That's how it works. Because if it was all false, nobody would buy into it. It's a ratio. I'm not sure exactly how you'd figure out what that golden mean is in propaganda or mind control, but I would suggest it's somewhere around 80-20 or 90-10. So 80% true, 20% false, or 90-10. And that's the perfect ratio for mind control. Okay? All the problems we face, we shouldn't be facing because they're all very easy to solve. Human beings are a creative species, highly creative. And we've been led to believe that we can't abandon this usurious capitalism, which has extended itself into horrible things like derivatives, which are really what's going to bring down the modern economy. And all this nonsense about future speculating and supercomputers. And, I mean, future speculating is actually raping future generations of their money. Okay? There's nothing good about it. You know, these people with all the money now, like the Mark Cubans, the Jeff Bezos, and the Mark Zuckerbergs, they're all hand-picked. They're all connected to intelligence. Okay? Maybe not directly, but indirectly. It's all just a big lie, folks. So you tell me how hard a problem this is to solve, because this is it in a nutshell. You don't want to live in a society where after several generations the moneylenders have all the money because usury is a funnel that eventually sends all the money to them. And you don't want to live in a society where the state tells you what to do. You want to recognize natural talent, work ethic, meritocracy, innate brilliance, and innate drive and creativity. You want to reward the individuals in your society by allowing them to choose how they express themselves in that society. This is the basic principle of freedom in the West. Why can't you do that without usury? Why is saying what I just said, that getting rid of usury, why would anybody characterize me as a communist for saying that? I don't want to live in a society where the state tells you what to do, what factory you're going to work at. It's all the same thing in the end now. We've sort of melded all these systems into one megalithic monster now that is a corporate fascism we're going into. right? The only way out of it now is to get out of it. If you live in any market they control, they're just going to use you like a slave and burn you out, paying rent and buying groceries. You'd be better off living as a peasant now, a campesino. But that's the problem in a nutshell. How do you maintain an individual's right to decide what they want to do in their life without a state telling them what to do, and also ensure that banks and financiers and hedge fund managers don't become the richest and most powerful people in your society? I'm not saying I have the answer to that question in today's podcast, but I'm sure there's like 500 undergrads at Ivy League universities that could come up with an answer. It's not a hard problem to solve. These problems are not solved because they don't want to solve them, because they created them. And they created them for a very specific reason. And that reason is to control us, to frustrate us, and to keep us spinning our wheels in the mud and fighting each other. Now, I don't know how we get out of this. Right? And my opinion of human beings may be a little grandiose too. Maybe I'm being a little naive in thinking that human beings are good enough to figure this out and work honestly and cooperatively with each other. Maybe I'm just being a little naive. The place I live now is literally the freest place I've ever lived in my life. Way more free than Asia, way more free than any place I've ever lived. So to sum up with today's podcast, we're in a war, but it's not the war you think it is. It's not the Joe Rogan kicking a heavy bag war. It's not the Navy SEALs creeping up on a beach with their breathers and their silencers on their automatic weapons. It's not Lioness. It's not a Taylor Sheridan TV show. It's a war in consciousness. And the only way to fight it is to control your consciousness. And that's done by spending time in silence by yourself. Okay? A book ain't going to save you. Jesus ain't going to save you. He'll give you a little respite. Jesus is a real spiritual force. There's no doubt about it. He's really here, non-physically, helping people. The testimonies are overwhelming. But how much spiritual welfare are you going to take? When are you going to own yourself? When are you going to be yourself? Because that's what it is. It's spiritual welfare. Getting bailed out of your sins. Spiritual people are self-reliant. They don't take welfare. No offense, Christians. I am Bruce McDonald, and this has in fact been the Talamanca Review. You folks be well.